Hello, dear listeners, and welcome to a very special episode. It's also a fond farewell. And as I'm Anne, your host of the Let's Talk About Grief podcast. And today we're going to gather and explore the profound journey of grief and the art of letting go. And I'm thrilled that I've got my co-host from Clubhouse joining me today as we lead you and ourselves through it all. And I just want to thank you, Sherrie Dunlevy, for being with me on this journey and for being here.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm so glad to be with you, and it's a bittersweet moment for you, I know, I'm sure, but it's my honor and privilege to be here with you, Anne.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for holding my hand like you have on so many other occasions. Yeah. How many times have we created in our lives a meaningful project and we just know its time has come? We just close it down or we just let it go and we bounce off to something else. Well, this podcast has been very meaningful to me for a number of years, and I didn't want to just stop the recording. I also wanted to use this as an opportunity to teach, which is what I tend to do. And earlier on this year, I did take a course given by Dr. Sarah Kerr on creating a good funeral. And she runs the Center for Sacred Death Care. And as I find comfort in rituals, I use this newfound learning to support me in the grief of letting go of the podcast. So I thought it would be a good way to help you, the listeners, if you have had to let go of something that's been meaningful for you. And there's sadness, but there's also been reflection. And to ease this transition, I mean, I've known about it probably since the beginning of the year, but I kept going. And I've written about my journey more in depth regarding the process I went through. And you can find those, they're available on my website and my blogs at Understanding Grief. So if you want to go more in depth into what my process was, you'll find them there. So,
Can we talk about the emotions you've been going through?
oh gosh, girl, the emotions. I'm not really enjoying this anymore. So it's recognizing that, and as I said, I continued just going through the motions. And it was the ego identity. Like, all right, if I give this up, what will I do? There's always that. Who am I if I give this up? But I've come to realize that it is the ego that needs these identities. So once I work through that, I'll always be a podcast host. Nobody can take that experience away, just like I'll always be a nurse. So once I'd calm myself down and work through that, I've been at this for about 6 years. So it was a lot. Yeah, there was tears, there was anger, there was frustration, there was a bit of depression because as I pushed myself to keep going, I landed myself in burnout. So I was not only dealing with grief, I was dealing with that as well.
Mm-hmm. I hear you. That's why my
The
podcast is on hiatus right now.
See, it happens to the best of us. And I think that's a fault of us. We just want to keep giving and giving, and especially when it's something we enjoy doing, just as you do.
Yes, but we have to sometimes, what do they say? Put the oxygen mask on yourself first.
Oh, so true, Sherry, for sure. And I'm glad you brought up the emotions because people are probably thinking, well, nobody died. Why was I feeling the sadness? Why was I crying? Why did I go through all this? And it doesn't matter. Any time there's a change or you're letting go something that was meaningful to you, there's grief.
Right.
I don't think we acknowledge that, do we, Sherry? That's why it's like, okay, the next shiny bright object, let me move over there. I'm uncomfortable with what I'm feeling right now.
Right. And I think that with grief, there comes a lot of rituals,
Mm.
right? And so have you gone through any rituals to bring on this change or move through this change in life?
Absolutely. And I'm so grateful to people who have come on the podcast who have spoken about rituals. It was something I hadn't really delved into. I mean, a funeral is actually a ritual. What do I normally share with my clients? I tell them to get a good journal and just write about what it is they're feeling. So as I was journaling, oh, I would light a candle. I like to create a feeling, a sacred space, if you like. And that's exactly what I did whilst working with all this. I would light a candle and I'd pick up my journal and I'd just write. Some days it was just blah, blah, blah until words would come. Other times it would just be a sentence as to, oh, what am I feeling? What will it be like? So exploratory. And as I mentioned, reflecting on the journey that I've had through this time. And when I look back at the journal, I realized those were blog posts, which is
Yes.
why I mentioned you can read more about it, what I
Yes, I
went
found
through.
that many of my journal has ended up in a blog.
Yeah, and
That's
that's
funny.
why I say
Yeah.
to people who are grieving a physical death, put it down in a journal because you'll be surprised to see how you move a bit forward and then you go back. And that was what I was finding with myself. I could talk, I'd be fine, and then the next I'd wake up feeling very sad and what am I going to do with the rest of my life? That was one big
Yeah.
thing.
And if I
So,
could add something to that, because it's something that I've had to practice, is when you have the fallback, to have grace for yourself.
mhm, yeah,
Because I tend to chastise myself. You should know this, Sherry. You know what I'm saying? I'm
yeah.
sure you know what I'm saying more than maybe what the listener would. I guess we feel like we should be more progressed or we should be more whatever just because we're basically grief educators, but
Yeah.
we're still the humans that are experiencing that grief and we have setbacks too.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, this we should do this and this, which is how we tend to be with our clients or listen to where they're at and then come up with some sort of script on how to help them. But you're right. We almost feel embarrassed at not being able to do it because, well, it was like when my dad died, and I was just completely at a loss as to know what to do. My goodness, I'm a nurse. I should know these things. Yes, I can be with somebody who's died. I'm fine there, but it was the emotions that I had to learn. So I hear what you're saying. So give yourself permission not to
Mhm.
be so hard on yourself, eh?
Yeah. So, like, you've done a lot of soul searching for this to make this decision, and in that decision, I'm sure that there were a lot of highlights. I'm sure there was a lot of looking back, through this podcast journey. Can you talk about that?
Oh gosh, yes. I think that's what kept me going was looking back. So I was able to feel gratitude that helps you let it go. Well, if I it was teaching me more about gratitude, which really helped me. I
Mhm.
mean, I've connected with some amazing, inspiring guests, yourself included. I've traveled for retreats and I've been able to engage with the listeners who actually found the conversations helpful. Yeah, I've actually been able to go and meet podcast hosts, if you can believe. I did a retreat with one of my guests in Italy, and I was recently in New York. I guess now it would be the end of last year, actually. And I met four of them that
Wow.
I'd interviewed, and one of them invited me to go there. So it's really touched me as much as it seems that I've touched my guests, which has been humbling and honoring. Well, as we close this out, I hope that they'll be able to embrace any challenge or changes that they're going through with grace, and to be able to see that it is an opportunity for growth, as sad as it all is. I'm hoping that throughout the time they have a favorite podcast that's resonated with them, and it's given them support in knowing what
Mhm.
somebody else has gone through, and it's given them some hope to carry on. So I'm hoping that people will still find the podcast. They still are, which is so interesting, and I'm sure you found it with yours, even though it's on pause. People are finding you and they're downloading. Some of the episodes are quite old, which is interesting.
Right. But it's new to someone that's new to grief, and
That's
that's what we have
right.
to keep remembering, right?
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
always gonna be people cycling in, I think, so,
Yes. I
that's some
I I thought it would just, okay, I'm not pushing any new content, that it would just, that would be it.
yeah.
So that has been a surprise.
Yeah. Well, I wanna thank you for sharing your story. I think it's inspiring to see you embracing this change with compassion and grace. It's really an honor to be with you here today t as you send it off.
Yeah. And what better way is to be able to create a funeral for the podcast, because how many people really know what a good funeral looks like? It's not, oh, you can't look at it and go, oh, that's really a good funeral. It's a feeling.
Mhm,
And I think, as I said at the beginning, I wanted to use this as a teaching moment so that people might get some ideas as to what they can put into their own funeral when a death of a loved one occurs. Because, in the words of Sarah Kerr, they are transformative in themselves.
mhm.
People go in as one thing and they come out changed. And I'm hoping, Sherry, as we go through the funeral part of this, that people can perhaps see it, and it'll give them some ideas.
Okay, so you've been thinking about this and planning this for quite some time. So let's just talk about this farewell ritual that you've envisioned for today.
Yeah, thank you. So I want to invite everybody to be part of it. Now, whether you imagine it's a big, beautiful church, a forest clearing that we're all standing in, a meeting hall, whatever brings comfort to you, just visualize that. And you can close your eyes as you're listening to this. I invite you to do that if it's comfortable. And picture us walking into this inviting space. And as we do so, music is filling the air. And the music I have chosen is the introduction to one of our earlier shows, and it's called Shooting the Breeze. You may recall it, Sherry. It was at the beginning of the interview we did way back in 22. So I'm going to give everybody a moment to listen to this music as they settle in. And as we do so, you'll see myself accompanied by Sherry and the Pod to Go folks. That Levi was my special engineer, and his team was the one that lovingly put it together, put it up on my podcast hosting site, and put the videos up on YouTube for me. So they really are a wonderful crew, and it's pod to go. So imagine they're coming with me as we take our space. And behind that are the 107 guests. Well, 106 because Sherrie is walking with us. And as you're listening to this music and we're filing in and we're taking our place where the seats are. And as we settle in, we're going to play some music that was written by Dr. Barry Whitney, a retired theology professor. Now, he had seen the words that I wrote called The Journey, and it was this poem that I created that was actually the chapters to my book that was coming out. And he created the words, and I'm reading the words as he's playing the music over it. So just take a moment to listen to this beautiful haunting music. And I'm so grateful to Dr. Whitney for wanting to create this for me. And now, as we pause, take a deep breath and let the music that we've just listened to go. I want to take a moment to remember the 108 guests who shared their stories of resilience, as well as all those listeners. There was 10,000 downloads that this podcast touched. And to think of the community that was there supporting us as we did this work. And then we will go into the eulogy part. And this is where Sherrie and I are going to read a couple of the reviews that we received. It's best to have them very short, or if you are creating a eulogy, have the officiant read all the wonderful things about the person rather than having a family member. Because once you get up there and you start reading the words, there's going to be tears, which is fine, but just to allow the flow of this. So I've chosen 3, and Sherrie will start us off, and I will read one of them as well. Sherrie, would you mind?
It was an honor and a pleasure to experience Anne as a podcast interviewer recently. She asks thoughtful questions and makes helpful connections that lead to powerful insights. I look forward to listening to more episodes.
Oh, thank you, everyone who did take the time to share. It warms my heart. It really does to read each and every one of them, whether they're good or bad. Now, if this was an actual in-person event, I'd get everyone to sing along to this song. And it's one we all possibly know. And I'm going to invite you all to stand. And it's called We Are Sailing, and it's by Rod Stewart. And it's recommended that we play this really loud as we all sing along. I'll put the words in the show notes if you would like to sing when you get to this part. And I think it's very apt because in it he's saying that he's sailing to be with the person, and then he's talking about he's dying to be with that person. And I just love Rod Stewart, what can I say? So this this is why I chose this. But it's also part of this ceremony and part of this funeral is I'd like everybody to imagine they're holding onto a canoe. So we're all standing and we're all holding onto this canoe. And when we get to about the middle of Rod singing, we're going to visualize as letting go, pushing the canoe out. And you can imagine that there's any loved ones that you are aware of who may now be an ancestor, and you can see them on the other side of the bank. And as you push the canoe out, all the ancestors from everybody that's in this ceremony is going to grab hold of the canoe and pull it towards them. So we're releasing some of the grief as we let go of the canoe, and the ancestors on the other side are pulling it with celebration and love, because these people have come home. The people who have died before are now getting to see their friends and family again. That's why it's such a celebration. And this is what creates healing and transformation. And it's in the playing of the music that's really loud that helps to build up the energy. And it's almost as if we're in a crucible. The fires are getting hotter and burning, and it's almost like turning the lead into gold, which is how we understand that transformation takes place. So as you sing and along with the music, this is the part that will actually help to transform your grief. So what I'll be doing is I'll be lighting a candle and I'll be setting fire after the podcast, because I don't want flames and fire as we're on air. So I will be doing that. And with the ashes, I will go out to the garden and I'll bury them and let them go back to the land. When you're singing something that either belonged to the person that has died, that was meaningful, and you can sense how this will bring up the emotions. And the reason you play it loud enough is so people can't hear you sobbing, crying, whatever, sighing. It's a safe place for you to let go everything, so that when you come out of the funeral, you are not leaving with one of those severe headaches that I tend to leave with, and a tight chest.
Yeah. And the constriction in your throat.
Yes.
Back.
Yeah, that's why Sarah suggests you play it really loud. And it can be any music, but choose something that people will know the words to. Could be what you sang around the campfire when you were smaller. So, as we settle down, and we listen to the music fading away, can take a nice deep breath. And we're going to conclude the ritual, and we're going to walk out of the gathering space together. I will lead the way with the team, and Sherrie's going to follow us. And then listeners, it will be your turn as we leave. And I'm going to play the music that many of you will be familiar with, that introduces the podcast each week and it ends the podcast. And then once the music has stopped, we're going to go into the podcast space, and that'll be a moment for us to eat and drink something before continuing on with our day. I've used this very brief outline of what Dr. Kerr teaches on her course and how to create the type of healing funeral ritual. And I'm hoping people will get a feeling of what a healing ritual can be. And I really hope you found this insightful and provided you with some ideas.
Well, Anne, I want to thank you because just thank you for creating such a beautiful and heartfelt space for us all.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Sherrie, for being with us today. And thanks to all the listeners. Remember, please, endings are nothing more but new beginnings in disguise. Until next time, I'm Anne. Take care.
And thank you for letting me be here. I appreciate it. So long, everyone.
Thank you, Sherrie. It's my pleasure. Bye.